All right, all right. Good morning. Got a great night's sleep last night, so I'm feeling good today. Hope everyone's feeling the same. Wait for a couple folks to jump on here. While we're doing that, I would like to remind everyone. I'm going to stream this at the bottom of this. Video. February 2nd through the 4th, 2023. This is coming up real quick in a couple weeks, as a matter of fact. Looks like about 3 weeks, a little bit less than 3 weeks. We are having our Sub2 Empire Ultimate Creative REI Blueprint here in St. Louis. And if anybody is looking to really take a deep dive into, really it's the framework that we use. That this framework was built around doing creative deals, and it's just it's kind of like it's just a punch list, really, on how we actually do these creative deals and how we're able to be so consistent with creative deals. So if you are interested in taking a look at what we're doing, head over to sub2event.com and check it out. We've got a great lineup of speakers and tons and tons and tons of knowledge. All right, let's see what we got going on here. Hey, Jonathan, how you doing, man? How do we avoid dealer status from the IRS when we're buying and selling on terms in volume within 12 months of using the installment sales method? Well, you know what? I had something else planned, but I think that's a very, very good question. That is a really good question. So that's what we're going to roll with today. We'll just roll with that one. I'll put off what I was going to talk about before, and let's roll with that, because a lot of folks don't realize that. That's when they get into this. Hold on, this thing scrolling at the bottom is really bothering me. And also, I'm going to throw the chat up here. There we go. All right, so yeah, dealer status. That's a really, really interesting question. So let's just go ahead and let's define this first. I'm going to take some notes here. And all right, I'm a little off guard. All right, so dealer status. Let's talk about this. All right. Let me make sure that I get I'm gonna record my screen just so I can use this as a video a little bit later on. All right. There we go. Okay. Last time I'm going to say dealer status. So what is dealer status? And more importantly, how do you get that designation? Right. So in the eyes of the IRS, okay, first let's back up to what a dealer actually is. Let's define what a dealer actually is. A dealer is someone who gets into a real estate deal with the intent to sell that property. So, for example, fix and flippers. Fix and flippers are dealers, right? Because they are not holding on to a property. And you are correct in that 12 months. So there's this intent when you get into a real estate deal. There's this, you have to have, for tax purposes, you have to know you kind of have to have an idea about what you're going to do as far as dispositioning that property. All right. So if your intent from the get-go is to turn around and flip that property or sell that property, you are considered a dealer on that deal. All right. And this is on a deal by deal basis, by the way. So this is on a per property basis. So I can go out and I can go out and buy a portfolio or build a portfolio of rental properties and still continue to do the flips without my rental properties being subject to dealer status. Okay. Doesn't mean that if you're audited that the IRS isn't going to look look a little bit deeper into your rental portfolio, but as long as they're purely rentals, your intent is not to sell them, and so ultimately that rental portfolio or those properties in that rental portfolio are going to be subject to capital gains versus well, now we get into the IRS stuff, but so those would be subject to capital gains versus ordinary income. And what wholesalers and flippers also know as self-employment tax. So that's one thing that I think a lot of wholesalers, when they get in this business, they don't realize that a large chunk of their earnings, if they don't actually write off some of their expenses, a huge portion of their earnings, that is considered active income. And so a very large portion of their earnings actually go to taxes. A huge portion. We're talking like, let's say that you are, let's say that you're in the 30% tax bracket, and you sell a house. I don't know. Maybe your gain is 100,000. That might be a little extreme, but maybe your gain is 100,000. You have a 30% ordinary income tax that you're going to pay on that $100,000 that you have earned, plus an additional 15 and some change percent in self-employment tax. Right? So, I mean, you're talking that's 45% of your earnings are going to taxes. Right? That is a huge, so on a $100,000 sale, if you don't have the deductions, if you don't take the take advantage of the tax code, you're looking at a $45,000 tax bill right there. All right. Now, this rule. So, well, wait a minute. Let me back up. So, what is the opposite of dealer status? So where do you want to be? If you are a dealer, if the opposite in the eyes of us, you want to be in the investor category, right? So instead of being a dealer, you want to be considered an investor, because investments are not investments are subject to a totally different part of the tax code, right? By the way, guys, I keep slinging around tax code and everything. Everybody has to understand, I'm not a tax strategist, a tax advisor, a CPA, none of that stuff. All right. So I'm just telling you, I'm just kind of regurgitating what my tax strategist / CPA has told me. All right. So investor status versus dealer status. What people don't understand is that this also applies to installment sales. And so an installment sale, okay, that's something separate. An installment sale in the eyes of the IRS is if you're selling on seller financing. So this would definitely apply to you if you are selling on seller financing. So if you are using contract for deed, if you are, if you're selling on mortgage rep, any seller financing that you offer is subject to this particular topic that we're talking about. Unfortunately, though, with installment sales, here's where the real kicker is with installment sales. If you turn around, let's say you pick up a property, you immediately sell this property. All right. Unfortunately for you, dealer status means that you are taxed on the entire gain of that sale, whether it's an installment sale or not. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you bought a house. It's January right now. So let's say that you bought a house January 1st. And I'm going to pull random numbers. All right. They're going to be round numbers. You bought a house January 1st, you paid 100K for it, right? This is your cost basis. This is your cost basis for tax purposes, right? Let's say you then immediately you sold that house to an owner occupied buyer on installments, right? So you sold it on contract for deed or something, but you sold it for 150K. You now have, in the eyes of the IRS, you have a $50,000 gain. Okay. So let's say in that deal that you took a $10,000 down payment, right? You took a $10,000 down payment and you received principal and interest. I don't know, maybe your payments were, I don't know, $800 a month. All right. So you are taking, let me pull up my calculator here. So essentially, you've taken 10K and your income, so your total intake for this year will be, let's say if if you bought it in January, you sold it in January, your entire income on this property, meaning your principal and interest income and the down payment that you took, is going to come out to $19,600. That's $800 per month for 12 months plus the 10K that you've taken in down payments. All right, so keep that number in mind, 19,600. Your tax basis is not the down payment and the principal slash interest income that you've taken, that 19,600. That's not your tax basis. Your tax basis is actually the 50K earnings. So it's the gain. So the 50K gain on that deal. All right. So what that means is, let's say again, you're in the 30% tax bracket. What that's going to mean for you, let me make sure. Yeah, what that's going to mean for you is that on that 50K, I keep saying 15, but I'm sorry. On that 50K, bring up another calculator here. You are looking at you're looking at paying $15,000 in taxes on ordinary income, because that is considered ordinary income. The 50K is considered ordinary income at that point if you're a dealer. So if you're in a 30% tax bracket, you're gonna pay $15,000 in taxes on that gain. But that is not all. You're also going to be subject to the self-employment tax. This is FICA. This is all of your supposed benefits that you get from your federal government, right? So this is Social Security. This is you paying into the system. You are going to be subject to another 15 point, I think it's like 15 and an eighth or something like that, right? You're going to be subject to that in addition to the other tax that you've already paid on the income, right? On that 50K. So you're looking at a total, 7,600 plus 15. Yeah, you're looking at a total tax liability of over $22,000. And guess what? Remember that 19,600, whatever? That's all we've collected on this. You're still going to owe at the end of the year. You're in the negative now at this point, right? Because you've only taken in 19,000 and some change, but your tax liability is 22,000. So not only has that wiped out your down payment, any down payment money that you've received, now you actually I'm sorry, not just your down payment. That's actually your total income on the property. Now you're another $4,000 in the hole that you have to pay in taxes, because remember that tax basis is the difference between the purchase price and the sales price. So that's that 50K. So you can see how this could be super, super problematic. I mean, you're talking a huge bill. So I guess the question is, and probably some of you, maybe you're thinking like, well, don't you sell all of your properties on on installment sales? And the answer is yes. I sell all of my single family. Well, not all of them. I've actually started to monetize a stream where maybe I'm buying properties in areas that I don't really care for. I would have normally passed on those deals, but I've actually brought in a partner who loves those things, and so it's kind of a mutual benefit there. But anyway, most of my properties that I cherry pick and I sell on installment sales. They are subject to this particular rule. They are subject to dealer status. All right, and that's just what I'm willing to accept. So the question then becomes, and I sell most of my properties on contract for deed, right? So um, the question, I guess, then becomes, how do you avoid being tagged as a dealer? And I'm talking about myself here, and the short answer to that is I don't. I do not. There's no way around it, really, and I'm certainly not going to be taken to task by the IRS and uh, have to end up paying some large tax bill. So really, what you have to do is you have to think about the activity um, that you are doing and plan for its tax ramifications. It's all that you can really do in this situation. Luckily, there are several benefits to being a dealer. If that sounds, that might sound a little crazy, but there are some benefits to being a dealer. And you have to remember, this is all done on dealer status is on a deal by deal basis. All right. So let's just talk about a few ways to actually deal with this scenario. Um, I would say that the very first, hey, Jonathan, I can't really read I don't, oh, okay. Also, yeah, it's just mistyped a little bit. Okay, we'll get to that question here after we answer this. But where are we at? Oh, several ways to deal with this. Number one, um, I beg of you, do not go out and hire just any random CPA or tax person, tax preparer, tax strategist. I would hire certainly someone that a CPA, for example. I would hire someone that understands real estate, first of all, and maybe has a large customer base of investors, or maybe is an investor themselves. They will understand this. All right. And what they're going to be able to do for you is they are going to be able to better guide you through a strategy for minimizing your tax liability as a dealer. Okay. So make sure that you have a good CPA. Um, here's one of the things, one of the kind of it's not really a benefit. It is a benefit, but because in totality here, we're talking about taxes, and very few of us actually receive any benefits at all from paying taxes. But uh, that's my little dig at the tax code. Um, but the good thing is as a dealer, you get to take deductions. So if I'm a fix and flipper and my intent is to sell a property, I'm a dealer. But for those of you that have done fix and flips, you know that just the earnings that you make on any of your fix and flips, you know that you have deductions in there. So you can take all allowable deductions. You can kind of apply the fix and flip model to this seller finance model. And so if you have upfront costs, like you have capital purchases, you're putting a roof on something, you're putting um, large ticket items, you get to depreciate you get to depreciate those capital expenditures over time. Then you have fix up, you have labor, you have materials, utilities, all of the normal stuff that you would get on a fix and flip project. You get to take those deductions as well as a dealer on your seller finance deals, right? So there's that. One of the really, really common things that, and actually, this is something that we're really, really thinking about, not just because of tax benefits, but um, one of the things that we're thinking about is selling our properties first, setting an intention up front that we are going to lease our properties for 12 months, meaning lease option or lease purchase. And so instead of having the intention of going into the deal with selling the deal, we have the intention of actually renting on a rent to own or lease option type basis. Okay, so that's going to in that transaction you're going to be creating a lease and then a separate option contract or a separate purchase contract for a later date. Preferably the purchase is really what you want. You want the on the acquisition side, I'm sorry, on the disposition side where you're selling to someone who's eventually going to own the property, you really want to have a lease purchase in place. That purchase contract is going to be your bilateral agreement that can be exercised at a later date, right? So one of the ideas and one of the this one would actually work for you. I would have no reason to believe that it wouldn't. And also my CPA, this is what my CPA has recommended in the past, is to go ahead and do what I just told you. Sell it at a later date. Go ahead and rent it for that 12-month period, and then convert that tenant into a buyer at the 12-month mark. It's actually this is why we've given it serious thought, because number one, it's a little bit easier to find a tenant buyer than it is to find a buyer. So on average, we spend about 45 days finding the right buyer for our properties. Okay, it's much easier to find someone out there who is looking for a rental or a rent to own type of situation. And so that's one of the reasons that we are looking at this model. And the other one's what I just told you, is we set our intention right up front that this is going to be a rental. So, and that establishes your intent for that to be a rental property. The problem with it, though, is that generally the difference between a seller finance, a sale on seller financing, and the lease option or lease purchase on that property is that, generally speaking, it's a little bit tougher to get those. If you sell your option contract for a fee, it's a little bit tougher to make that fee. That fee is not going to be near as high as a seller finance down payment. So you can require that, let's say somebody buys that option contract from you, and later on they want to buy it. Now you can require both. You can say, hey, I'll sell you this option contract for, I don't know, $10,000, but when I do ultimately sell or finance this house to you, I'm going to need another 10,000. So you can break it up in chunks there. It's just, I used to do lease options as my business model. That was it when I dispoed. So I would lease option to a tenant buyer. And ultimately what I found out was that, right around tax time, and I guess this also there's a lot that goes into this, that, a lot of it has to do with the areas that you're selling in, or you're writing these lease options in. But I just found that, ultimately that model wasn't for me, because a lot of what I was, so that option fee that I was taking in, a lot of it would just go to repairs anyway. And, and almost no one exercised their option. So, but this is an option for you. And I think we are going to look a little bit deeper into, in my business, we're going to look a little bit deeper into this model, so that we don't have this dealer status always hanging around, and we have to, write these deductions, and even though we're still going to take those deductions, it would benefit us even more if we were going into a rental type of scenario or a lease option type of scenario. We can still take those deductions. That would even further reduce our tax liability. So yeah, but to kind of get around dealer status, that is going to be one of your options. All right. Another thing that we have to think about, let's see what we got here. Could we not have a surrogate dealer who we could JV with? And I've never really given that a whole lot of thought, Jonathan. That's a really good. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. You say, could we not have a surrogate dealer who we could JV with? And I don't think it's going to matter because I do, but either way, even if you had a surrogate dealer, the tax liability is still the same. So, I don't know the answer to that question. Sorry. Okay. One of the things also that I would touch on is that a lot of our deals don't have a ton of equity in them. We actually create our equity when we sell. So you would have to really be mindful of, let's say, I picked up a property at 90% of its value, 90% LTV. All right. So there's only 10% equity in this deal. So, and let's say I pick it up for 100. I'm sorry, I pick it up for 90. It's only worth 100, and I turn around and sell it for 120. Well, and maybe that area supports it. I guess what I'm really trying to say is it's just math. You're just going to have to figure out the math, and this is where a good CPA can help you out, and maybe point out areas where you can take those deductions. So for us, it's not a huge deal. This is why we don't really care a whole lot about equity. It's a bonus, I guess, but yeah. So it just and really the equity part isn't the important part. The important part is what you bought it for versus what you sold it for. So just be mindful. Just be mindful of that. Do the math and see if it works out. This is also going to put you in a position where you're going to have to figure out how much of a down payment that you have to have, right? So yeah, just do the math. And the next one is, and I have not done this. I know people that have done this. I think it's incredibly complex because there are different tax reporting requirements, but a lot of people start a C corp. This is the reason they start a C corp. And what they'll do is they'll let the C corp be the let me back up for a second. Since an LLC is a disregarded entity in the eyes of the IRS, you could not do this. You could not use a strategy using an LLC. So what you have to do is people will start a C corp. That C corp will become the dealer. All right. Whether the maintenance of a C corp is worth it to you is entirely up to you and entirely up to your strategy. But the thing about a C corp is corporate taxes are far less than what individual income taxes are. So your corporate tax rate is, I don't know. I don't even know what it is right now. I think it's 20-ish%, something like that. So if the C corp actually owned the seller finance properties and they were offering the financing on them, they're selling them on installments, the C corp would only be subject to the 20-ish% in corporate taxes, right? And that would not trickle down to you as the individual on your individual return like it does with an LLC. So there is that strategy as well. And like I said, I know some people that have that. It's just for me, that is I like to run lean and mean, and so for me to have a C corp is a little more of it's more of a headache than what I'm willing to put up with. All right. So, hey, Jonathan, I think I think on your I don't know if you're typing on your phone or what, but that's twice you've put in Tom Akey. Oh, Tom. Oh, okay, that's a name. Okay, I thought it was a misspelling. Okay. Can a C corp utilize the IRS installment sale method? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely they can. 100%. And you know what? You have to check on the S corp part of it. But if you are going to uh, later file as an S corp, if you're an LLC but you want to be designated as an S corp for tax purposes, I would definitely um, do a little bit of research. Ask your tax professional whether an S corp can utilize, or if this can be done using an S corp, because that I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on the S corp. I know the C corp can. Um, so I have a buddy, several buddies that went through the elite program, and so Anderson Advisors would set them up with um, these big elaborate kind of corporate structures. And for me, it just wasn't for me. It's not something that I'm not willing to manage, and I'm not really willing to pay to manage it. But it can be done definitely in a C corp for sure. All right. I'm going to throw something else out there. This is something I'm kind of reluctant to even do this, but um, I actually have to check on this. I'm not sure that this would fly. I'm not sure that this would fly. So what I'm going to talk about are trusts a little bit more, and quite possibly I will check with my CPA on this. So don't take this as gospel, and don't try and go out and use this without consulting with a CPA. My idea on this one to get around this involves a trust. And so essentially, here's what we would do. And I thought about this a lot because I've done some deals down in Texas where, Texas, it's really tough to do lease options down there. You can do them. I don't know that how you have to manage that and comply with their laws is worth the effort. But good luck doing contract for deed down there. Uh, it's impossible. It's impossible to do. To sell a property on installments on contract for deed in Texas. And so this is kind of where we came up with this idea. The idea involves a trust. And we kind of touched on it, I think, maybe in the last video, maybe the one before that. Essentially, what we do is we deed a property into a trust. All right. The property goes into the trust. Remember what we talked about. What would beneficial interest be considered in a trust? It's considered personal property, right? It's not real property. Beneficial ownership in a trust is not real property. It is personal property. So imagine this, and again, I am advising you to talk to somebody about this because this is just an idea that I have not implemented yet. So imagine this. Imagine that you sell your personal property, which is your beneficial interest in a trust. Imagine you sell that to a buyer, an owner-occupant buyer of the property that you are wanting to sell on installments. Well, you're not selling the property on installments. What you're doing instead is you're selling your personal property, which is the beneficial ownership of that trust in installments. So it's a little bit different. You're selling personal property versus real property. That's the big difference here. Okay, so, and again, I don't know that this is going to fly, but you sell that personal property, that beneficial ownership, you sell that on installments. Your security for that beneficial ownership is then, and if you remember, we talked about this, a UCC-1 filing with the Secretary of State. That's going to be the security for that personal property or that beneficial ownership. All right, so does that qualify you as a dealer? At least on the surface, not in the sense that we're dealing with real property anymore, because we're dealing with personal property. So that's just kind of an idea, something that I'm going to float out there. talk to some attorneys about and actually talk with my tax guy about, because I do believe at least, at least logically, that would make sense. That makes sense. You're selling personal property versus real property, because the deed isn't changing hands. There is no installment sale on the real property. Okay, so again, I don't know if that would fly. I don't know how that would be looked at, but because ultimately your trustee still owns the property, right? So yeah, this was a very, very this is a very good question, because a lot of folks will just go out there and willy nilly, just start uh, employ this strategy of seller finance strategy, not really even realize the tax ramifications. So very good question, Jonathan. That was an excellent. And I know that this video was probably a little bit, or this live rather, was a little bit kind of ad hoc and what have you. But it's a very good question. It's something that needs to be talked about a little bit more. So let's quickly recap on this: dealer status versus investor status. Investor status, that's what you want. You don't want to become a dealer if you can at all help it. If your intent when you purchase property is to immediately sell it or sell it within a year's time, then you are a dealer, and you're going to have to learn the ins and outs of being a dealer. The good thing about being a dealer is that we have a second call with an attorney and a few messages out to CPAs we will share. Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, please do. So if you understand kind of that last scenario that I gave you with beneficial ownership, maybe you can ask that question. I will ask my folks that same question, and we'll see what the consensus is. All right, so back to the. No, I'm not seeing Tom's questions at all. Is he on Facebook? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing those questions. You know what? I had a security warning on my Facebook account, so maybe it's not coming through here. I don't know. Okay, and I didn't check Facebook before I jumped on here to see if the stream was live, so you guys would have to tell me that. So anyway, quick recap: investor status versus dealer status. You want to be in investor status, but if you're flipping houses, if you're selling on seller financing, you're a dealer, and so you've got to learn how to mitigate your tax liability there. All right, and that's just an education. That's all that it is, and the help of a really, really good CPA or tax strategist, someone in that field that can help you with that. The good things about being a dealer is that you do get to take, deductions on your taxes for your capital expenditures, your repairs, all of that good stuff. Any dollar that you put into, other than capital expenditures, because those get depreciated over time, but your repairs, your utilities, all of that good stuff, you get to write that stuff off. Your gas, your mileage, all of that stuff gets to be comes into the equation if you are in dealer status. So it's just math. It's just math at that point, and you're going to figure out whether or not it's for you. Do you want to deal with it? One of the ways that we can deal with it is we can put our seller finance properties out there as lease options or lease purchases first, so that and then we'll convert those tenants into buyers. So that would definitely set the intent for the next 12 months to be for a rental property. So you wouldn't be subject to that ordinary income and that self-employment tax. All right. One of the other ways we talked about was using a C corp. Now, this will not work with an LLC, and I'm questionable whether it would work with an S corp. I'm just not familiar with using an S corp in that way, in that manner. But it definitely would work with a C corp. where the C corp becomes a dealer, and there's corporate tax versus individual income tax and self-employment tax. Right, so there's that. Then finally, we talked about this little idea. It was strictly an idea. I've not put it into play. I have not used this strategy or attempted to use this strategy. It's just kind of out there right now as an idea in the ether, and that is to sell personal property on installments versus selling the actual real estate on installments. So you're not using you would be using a promissory note and a UCC1 filing in that case. All right. Again, don't hold me to that. I don't know that is. I don't know if that's. I wouldn't. I just don't know how the IRS would look at that. I really have no idea. So, any other questions? Anything else going on? Any other topics? All right. All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and end the call. We don't have anything else. Really quick. I'm going to throw this up here one more time. If you guys are in the St. Louis area, or you'd be traveling to the St. Louis area, or maybe you would like to, make a special trip to St. Louis. We are having on February 2nd through the 4th is our the Ultimate Creative REI Blueprint. It's a 3-day event. It's going to be. We got some really great speakers coming in. We've got. I don't know if any of you know David Dodge. David Dodge is coming in. I've seen this guy's business grow crazy. I mean, the guys they're doing really, really big things, and he's basically, and Dave is a marketing guy. Like they are so consistent on their marketing. They just do a lot of great work, and so David's going to be joining us, and then we are going to have Nick Legomaro. Some of you know Nick. And in fact, I think Jonathan, I met you through Nick. But Nick runs Creative Dealmaker, and Nick is all about buying and selling notes, which for us is a kind of a natural progression from what we do on the creative financing side into the note world, right? So, so it'd be really, really interesting. But Nick's going to be speaking at this event as well. He's going to tell you all about these about buying and selling notes. Nick is. What he's doing is next level, and it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. So, all right, guys, I think that's going to do it. I think that's all I have. I guess if I missed anything on this topic, go ahead and throw it in the comments, and we'll do our best to get to your questions as they pop up. All right, folks, I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my Sunday. I want you to do the same. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.